So hello everyone, welcome to our third session in interviewing ENCODS keynote speaker. So today we are pleased to receive an amazing researcher, Dr. Alain Prochiantz. Welcome.
Bonjour.
So Dr. Alain is working on, started his research with the analysis and investigation of the RNA structure. Then he started his work in neuroscience about the development and the evolution of the nervous system. But you are more than researcher because you also work with young people via courses in the Collège de France, and you share a lot of conferences. You're also publishing some book and have a link with the art and the startup world. So in this interview, we are not going to speak only about science and basic science, but we're going to speak about your research path and the questions underlying the science. So for our first question, we wanted to ask you, because the ENCODE 2020 topic is working across different scales in neuroscience, we wanted to know you, because you're working on a cellular and a molecular scale, how and if the global scale of behavior or neuroevolution, for example, face you, and how?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question. Okay, indeed, if you consider the function of the brain, okay, what is a brain? A brain is what is a nervous system. In fact, the plants don't have brains. You know that, right? Plants don't have brain because they don't move. You know, so everything comes by the air or by the earth, by the sun. So they don't have to move to survive and reproduce. I mean, all animals have to move, and they have to move. It's very complex because they have to move in response to the environment. Okay, what you see, what you smell, what you hear. You need to get your food. You need to escape a predator. You need, so it's very important that you integrate at the level of your brain what is around, and your brain will respond to the environment. And with evolution, I mean, this will become more and more complex. It's not only a sensory motor system, but then you start thinking, oh, this guy is very big. Okay, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to get away and run fast. So the brain, I mean, has evolved in such a way that all the systems in the brain interact to allow you to make a decision on what you're going to do next. I mean, in any given situation. And this, indeed, you learn as your brain develops, okay, during periods, which are very important periods that we call critical periods, during which your cortex and the cortex of most animals adapt to the history of the animal, okay, and to the environment of the animal. So you need to understand the molecular mechanisms that allow the animal to construct the networks which in the brain will allow it, the animal, to be, so to say, adapted to its environment, okay? So indeed you have to be at the cellular level because there are neurons that make synapses. You need to be at the molecular level because, you need the genes, you need the receptors, you need the inhibition with GABA, you need the activation with glutamate, I mean, all these things. But at the end of the day, all this is to allow the animal to make a decision which have to do with behavior. So you cannot just study a brain at one single level. I mean, if you are a physiologist, I mean, you have to study the brain at all levels. And some people will be only interested in looking at genes and molecular biology and transcription, and translation and modification of the genome. But if you are a true physiologist, I mean, all this must be integrated from the molecule to the behavior. And this is what we've been trying to do in my lab forever. I mean, ever doesn't exist, but for a very long period of time. I mean, since I left the RNA sequencing business in plant viruses, but as you mentioned at the beginning. Yeah. So I don't know whether this tells you, I mean, answers your question, but it has to do with evolution also. I mean, that's obvious because, you know, the brain of a mouse is not the brain of a human. So in fact, for example, the frontal cortex would be more developed in a human being. So you have more complex structures, and indeed, I mean, the association cortex is more important. So you have to think more about what you are doing. So and the visual system is less important. So with evolution, I mean, the size of the cortex has evolved, but also, I mean, the different territories that are attributed to different functions have been modified in size and complexity. The density of the networks, for example. So or the number of glial cells. So I mean, you cannot understand behavior if you don't understand the brain, if you don't understand the evolution of the brain, and if you don't understand the molecules, which are, I mean, taking part in this very, very difficult choreography that is a thinking brain, or a moving person, or a moving animal. Okay, it's complex.
That's a very interesting answer on like reflection, I think. And because you say like you did your PhD on RNA viruses, like plant RNA viruses. So first, so why have you been interested in neurosciences? And what I mean, my question is like, would you advise the next generation of researcher, like young PhD students, to not restrict itself to only one field? What is your mind?
Okay. In fact, you know, I was always interested in neurosciences from the beginning. You know, I'm a pretty old person now. I mean, but when I started science, biology, for reasons that, in fact, I don't know why, to be honest. I mean, because, but I did. Okay, and the brain was really something which I thought was very interesting. But in the 1970s, you know, in fact, I started at my first lab was in 1971. Okay, you were not born, but in 1971, we knew that molecular biology would be something very important, you know, and that it was sort of not possible to study the brain or to study behavior, leaving molecular biology aside. Okay, so I wanted to have some training in molecular biology. But at the time, there were not many labs in neurosciences that were doing neurobiology, I mean, molecular biology. Now we had a lot of electrophysiologists, anatomists, and behavior people. I mean, beautiful science, honestly, pharmacology, beautiful science. But, you know, the molecular biology was not very well developed. So I decided to go to a lab where I could learn molecular biology to use it later in my neurobiology studies. And I found this lab. I mean, it was a very interesting lab. It was at the Faculty of Sciences in Jussieu, I mean, at the time, Institut Jacques Monod. And I found a project on the structure of messenger RNAs. It was a very bizarre RNA. It was a plant virus RNA, the turnip yellow mosaic virus RNA. I mean, this is really, really, really weird for a neurobiologist, but we decided to work on it has peculiar properties that I don't want to develop now or explain now, but the 3' terminus of this RNA was able to be amino acylated, like transfer RNA. So we wanted to understand the structure of this thing and to do the sequence of this RNA. So at the time, I mean, the reverse transcriptases had not been described or barely described. You know, Temin and Baltimore, I mean, had not started to work. Well, they had discovered the reverse transcription, but it was not something which was of common use in the lab to do RNA sequencing. You know, take RNA, make DNA, and sequence. Okay, as we do now. So at the time, we had to purify a fragment of RNA, and this took me 5 years, and something you would do in 1 day, more or less, today. Okay, took me 5 years, but it was by chemical means. I mean, sequencing was doing chemistry, and I went to MIT, to the chemistry department in Cambridge, USA, And I was exposed to this environment. So, you know, in fact, it took me 5 years to do something that you could do in 1 week now, more or less. But I learned a lot because I was exposed to different people, different technologies, and also to chemistry, which I think is very important. I mean, we speak a lot of physics in biology, but we tend to forget chemistry. And, you know, molecules are very important. To go back to your first question, I think molecules are very important. So, so I learned to do RNA sequencing using chemical technologies, and no, then it became obsolete. Now, then I turned to neurosciences, but 5 years later, I mean, nobody was doing sequencing with the chemical technologies. I mean, everybody was doing molecular biology in a different way. So in fact, I mean, my science was totally obsolete. So the main advantage that I took there was to get sort of in contact with chemistry. And this has been extremely useful after. So indeed, yes, I think you shouldn't be scared to change field after your thesis. You know, I mean, also you have to, I realize perfectly well that, or to change field during your cursus, I mean, your entire scientific life. But I understand that the situation now is not what it used to be when I was young, a long time ago, I mean, unfortunately. But, and you have a huge pressure, and you have to do your thesis in a very short period of time. You cannot lose time, and then if you change field, you have to redo it again and learn again, and the pressure is so high on scientists today that it makes it extremely difficult. You have to be very courageous to do that. I mean, it's doable, but I understand that people would hesitate. Yeah, I do understand that they would hesitate. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's perfect for the next question, which is because this event is done for PhD, from PhD, and one of our major focus is the transition between being a trainee to become a researcher. So we wanted to take the advantage to have you, because you were a leader of a different team and director of different department, etc. So we wanted to ask you, what is it to set up a lab, like from the theoretical aspect, so how to define a topic, be confident that this topic will become our research field for many years, and also in the technical aspect, so what it is to have an amount of money to buy like machines, to to recruit trainee. So what is it to set up a lab?
So first, I would say that a trainee is a scientist. Okay, I mean, there is no good lab without good students, and in fact, in most labs, I mean, students and postdocs, I mean, do the job. Okay, it's true that there was a period when older people would work at the bench until they are 50 or something like that, but it's less and less the case because of the huge administration. I mean, you have to look for grants, you have to write, you have. So in a way, I mean, I don't see why. I mean, a trainee shouldn't be called a researcher. Okay, they have to be trained, but I think we should really be grateful to students and postdocs and technicians, I mean, for the work they do in the lab, because they do the real job. Okay, I mean, not all the real job, because a project is very important. So you have to work on a project. So, in fact, when you start your lab, I mean, it's not because only you want to start a lab. I mean, the way I see it, okay, I mean, I might be wrong. I might not say things people will agree with or even will like, okay? But I think you should start your lab when you have found a project which is important for you, okay? You have the object, you found your scientific object. And PhD and a postdoc or two postdocs, I mean, sometimes, I mean, which will occupy something like 10 years of your life, more or less, between 5 and 10 years of your life, should allow you, if you want to continue, to find what you want to work on, okay? And this is not only a job, okay? This is an existential choice, okay? So because you will live with this, you will have it in your head day and night, okay? I mean, it's not a normal job to be a scientist. You don't start at 9 and end at 5 and take your weekends and go on holidays, and you know, you can do that, but then you are more an engineer, and it's very nice to be an engineer. I have a great respect, but a group leader, you know, has something in him or her which, you know, is very important. So if you start a group with a project, it must be a project that you love, okay? You love your project, okay? Now, buying and getting grants, normally you should be good. I mean, the young people are extremely good. I mean, you know, when they get to the stage when they start a group, they are just amazingly good. I mean, if you look at their CVs, I mean, compared to the CVs we had when we started our own groups, I mean, it's just, it's not comparable. You're much better. So you should be good, and you should have your project. You should love your project, and then all the rest is not so important, you know. I mean, buying materials, I mean, you will work in an institute, and you have platforms, basically. I mean, you know, you will buy your little things, you know, pipette man and things like that. But in fact, the main instruments, microscopes, you know, proteomics, bioinformatics, everything will be on the platform. It's shared between the different groups. So you don't have to invest in that anymore, the way science is working now. Which was not the case when I was younger, you know, with these big, I mean, platforms were not so numerous. And well, the best thing is, the most important thing you have to do, I mean, in my opinion, and again, I might be wrong, okay? I mean, I've been wrong so many times in my life, but once more will not hurt, okay? So I think the thing for me, which is the most important, is to choose the right people, okay? To choose the right people with whom you're going to work, especially if your line of research is difficult and original and complicated. You need to have people who are just as enthusiastic as you are for the work that they are doing, and will involve themselves with quality. I mean, they have to be good, but also, I mean, with will put their brains in your project, okay? So this, I think, is very important, because if you work with people who don't like what you are doing, or just do it just like that, you know, just to please you because they are polite, they want to have their salary at the end of the month, it will never work, okay? So for me, this is the most important. I mean, I have an example. I mean, when it was late in my life, in fact, you know, I was already 42, you know, when I discovered something that I discovered, like, was not expected at all, okay, I can tell you that. At the time, I mean, if I had not had 2 or 3 persons, we were just, you know, beautiful persons, among them, 1 student, okay, I would never have been able to continue this project, okay? And we are still friends, you know. I am the godfather of the son of one of them, and you know, and it has become like a scientific family, and this, I think, is very important. I mean, to have a solidarity within a group, and to like the people you work with, and to have people who are really all focused on one objective, okay? Grants, materials, for me, it's secondary. You need a good project, a project that you love, and good people to work with you. And then, you know, it's road for success. Unless you fail. Excuse me?
No, I just say thank you for your answer. I'm really happy to hear that, because a lot of time we speak about material and stuff, but we sometimes forget human beings, and that I'm happy to hear it.
You have another question, or you want to go on like that?
Yeah, no, I have another question. It's not really more. It's not about lab and about your work, but more. It's more about a second part of your work. Like you have been a lot involved in science popularization, and so like as Sarah said at the beginning, you worked on books and life evolution mainly. You produced a play at the Théâtre de la Colline in Paris. You created an exhibition as well on science, and I would like to ask you, why is it so important to you to be involved in that type of transmission and communication?
But there are different things. It's true that I wrote 4 plays with a friend of mine. I wrote 12 books or so, and I had radio shows and things like that. And probably because I like to write. Okay, I'm a writing character. I mean, I cannot think if I don't write. Okay, so it's part of my pleasure in life is to write. But you know, not everybody has to be like that. In terms of science popularization, I think it's very important. It's very important because you know science is everywhere in our lives. Okay, I mean, especially in modern societies, science is just you know all around us. You use a cell phone. I mean, there's science. Okay, you use Zoom. There is science. Okay. We had the COVID crisis. I don't know whether you remember the COVID crisis, 2020. And you could see that science was around. It was very important. I mean, and yet you have a lot of people that don't want to hear about it, that don't know about science. And I mean, the COVID crisis was a very good illustration of ignorance and sometimes hostility to science. Okay, and this can be extremely destructive. I know if you don't take your jabs, your shots, you're not vaccinated, not only do you endanger yourself, but you endanger the others. Okay, so really, I mean, we need to help people to know what science is about, and not only the lay people. Okay, also the politicians. You know, we if you go to the Parliament in France, I mean, how many scientists do you have there? Okay, 1 out of 100. When science is everywhere, I mean, so how can they make decisions? No, indeed, they can listen to experts and try to understand what's going on, but first, they are not always able to understand. Okay, not that there are some people are very smart, but sometimes they cannot understand science. Also, the experts do not always agree. I mean, between them, you know. I mean, experts can disagree. I mean, it's science, so it's not religion. So you can have different opinions. You can have, and your opinion can evolve with the knowledge. So it's very complicated to have a sort of consensus among experts. And again, I think the COVID crisis has been a very, very interesting illustration of what I'm telling you. Okay, but at some point, a politician has to make decisions, and if he wants to make decision, or if she wants to make decision, well, I mean, there is a need for a basic understanding of what's going on. Okay, so I don't see how we be able to face what is coming up, like you know the heating of the planet, or you know all these natural disasters. I mean that may come up, and the young generation is pretty anxious about that, and I understand it. You know, for me, it's too late. You know, I mean, I will have some nice warm weather until the end of my life, so this would be wonderful. But for younger people, they may experience something not that pleasant, and science will have to play a role. I mean, in the adaptation. You know, I mean, so. Yes, it is important to popularize, not only for the lay people, but also the people who are in a position to make decisions, to take decisions. But not only, there's a second aspect, which I think is even more important. as we have already sort of alluded to, science is becoming more and more time demanding. You know, I mean, you're in the lab early and you're in the lab late, and you have 1 million things to do, and you have to take care of, you know, and you have no time to think. I'm sorry to say that, but you know, you don't even have time to read the papers. Many of the young scientists, when they are very good, they read the abstracts, okay? And they have a series of keywords which, you know, bring the abstracts to their attention. But they don't even have the time to read the papers. They don't have the time to read the old people, Claude Bernard, Turing, Haeckel, Darwin, I mean, you know. So doing this is forcing oneself to stop, okay? In French, I say, lever le nez du guidon, okay? To stop, to breathe, to look at the countryside, and to start thinking. Because what we are doing is not novel. You know, we do it with different technologies, we do it with different means, but all the theories, I mean, all the problems, they are here, and they have been here for a long period of time. So if you read Darwin, or if you read Lamarck, or if you read Turing, or if you read Claude Bernard, or if you read Haeckel, or if you read all these people, if you take the time to read them, and if you write books, you're forced to read them, then you start learning things which are extremely important for your present research. Okay, so this will feed your research. Now, this is what I call nocturnal science. Okay, so you have the science, the nocturnal science, but it takes a lot of time, but it's work. No, it's not science. It's not popularization. It is part of your scientific job to know what people have done before you, you know. Because the last experiments are not a summary of everything that came before. Not at all, you know. For example, you know, I've been working on morphogenes. You know, I had the chair of morphogenetic processes at Collège de France for several years. So, you know, I'm a morphogenetician, we'll say. And, you know, when I started to read Turing, because we were writing a play where Turing was, you know, having a role, I mean, with my friend Jean-François Perret. So I started to read Turing, whom I had never read. So I started to read Turing, and I discovered that, you know, his theory on morphogenes was exactly what I was developing in my lab. And this was extremely helpful for me to think about what I was doing. And the same thing happened to me when I wrote a little book for on Claude Bernard in the fifth collection called Philosophy or something like that. And I discovered someone who was thinking that development is part of physiology. You know, cells die and are replaced. DNA breaks and is repaired, things like that. You know, and you know, this has really invaded my way of thinking in terms of as a physiologist, because at the beginning I was a developmental biologist, and I became a physiologist. And now I am very interested in pathologies, because pathology is an adult development that goes wrong. You don't repair well. You don't have the proper number of cells, too many or not enough, things like that. You know, if you don't repair well, you will have wrinkles. You will find out in due time. So reading these guys, I mean, and girls, in fact, helped me a lot to think about my own science. And I think it has enriched my way of doing science. So, you know, there are two aspects, okay? One is popular science. One is to make, like when you do lectures at the Collège de France, okay? And the other one is that you need to read to understand what you are doing, not to be only at the latest point of the technology. It's nice to be at the latest point of the technology, but if you don't understand what you are doing, I mean, it's useless.
That's very interesting, because we don't hear a lot the second part. Like, it's not a common answer, so that's very interesting. And it's probably linked to your answer, but I would like to ask you, which advice would you have liked to receive at the beginning of your career as scientist?
To scientists,
like
to young scientists?
You as younger, which advice would you have liked to have?
But that's very complicated because you know, we are all very different. You know, I mean, so they are only individuals in nature. Okay, so you are you, and I'm me, and I'm not better than you are. You know, we're just different. So we are not going to. There's no general rule, I would say. I mean, we have to behave in agreement with what we are. No, if we do science, we have to be happy. Okay, but that's absolutely, this is a necessity. If you're not happy doing science, do something else or do nothing. Okay, it's very nice to do nothing, but if you do science, it's for pleasure. It's not a job. Okay, so you have to find a way to enjoy it. I mean, you have to wake up in the morning and run to the lab. Okay, the day you wake up and you don't want to go to the lab, there's something wrong. Okay, so this is very important. Now, the general advice, no, I mean, all people give advice. I mean, this is a bit ridiculous, okay? But what I can tell you is the way I have seen things myself, okay? And this is not an advice because you do what you have to do. I mean, on the basis of what I just discussed with you a few seconds ago. I think you have to take the time. And again, I mean, this is very difficult, even more difficult today than it was in my time, okay? It's still my time. I'm not dead, okay? But when I was young, okay? I still work. So, but take the time to enjoy. And don't try necessarily to do something which is extraordinary, okay? Don't have dreams of glory, okay? I mean, you don't want to go to Stockholm, you know, who cares? You don't want medals, you know, I mean, the medals are for pupils. So you just want to enjoy what you are doing and do it extremely seriously with no shortcuts, okay? If you like what you're doing, no shortcuts. Do it very properly, very cleanly. And, you know, that's fine. I mean, because what you're doing is going to be in your brain, I mean, full time. You do the cooking, you will think about your problem. You will go to bed, you will think about your problem. You will, you know, and if someone asks you, what do you think of? I mean, don't answer, okay? I mean, say, I think of you, but, you know, in fact, you think of your problem because this is what is really here, okay? And this is really the way to enjoy science, okay? Now, it might happen that you find something which is very uncanny, very bizarre, very weird, very unexpected, that goes against the dogma. And then you have to be very careful, okay? Because there are 99.99% chances that you're wrong. But yet, you have to look at it. You have to look at it, and if by chance or not by chance, sometimes it's not chance, it's just a disaster for your life. But if it happens to be true, if you have it verified by other people, even if it goes against the dogma, don't give up, okay? Ever. And this will be very difficult because you will have the big wheels against you, you will have the editors against you, you will have a lot of people against you, and you will find out that in science, talent is not enough. You also need character, okay? This is something you really have to learn. But hopefully this will not happen to you, okay? You will enjoy normal science, and this is very nice. You will enjoy doing your job, and you will never have this sort of difficulties, but you will develop beautiful projects and be very successful. And but the day you don't enjoy it anymore, well, do something else. I mean, there are so many things to do in life, you know, and life is so short. But this would be my advice, but it's only an advice of an old person, so you don't have to pay attention to it, okay?
Okay, we're gonna forget it. So for our last question, and actually this related to what you said about like writing our topic. So for the last question, we wanted to ask you, what is the place of the imagination in science? So I'm going to keep it open and tell you then the underlying question.
Okay, this is a very important question, because honestly, I think that imagination is at the core of science. You cannot do science without imagination. But it's very complicated because imagination has to be extremely rigorous. Okay, imagination is not, imagination is, in fact, what you would call hypothesis. You have a phenomenon and you don't understand what's going on. And if you understand, I mean, it's not science anymore. Okay, I mean, it's I don't know what it is. But if you understand, honestly, you don't understand. Okay, I mean, this happens every day. And then you will form hypotheses. Okay, and this requires your imagination. You have to turn things around in your head, and it could be this, and it could be this, and it could be this. But this imagination has to be refutable. No, it has to lead to experiments which will allow you to say, well, this is true or this is not true. And this is the definition of science. The definition of science is to make hypotheses and to refute the hypothesis. If your hypothesis is not refutable, it's not science anymore. Okay. So if you make by imagination, you form an hypothesis or a theory, you have to build the experiment that will allow you to say, this is true or this is not true. And if it is not true, forget about it, okay? And if it is true, I mean, you have to do it again and again and again. This is why I think imagination, which I would call, I mean, in fact, forming hypothesis, is the basis of science. Alors, I know, I know that it is very difficult. I know that the editors of the big journals will not like a young person, not established yet, in a discussion to propose a hypothesis, even if it is very well built and if experiments are proposed to destroy it or to support it, okay? It's either one. And it's even more difficult today because of the technologies. I have nothing against technologies, okay? I have developed technologies myself. I think it's very important to have new technologies, but the technology is as a service of the ideas. You should not remove the ideas because you have a good microscope that allows you to see better, okay? You clarify the brain and you take a microscope, last generation, and you see the spines and they are very nice in green and red and blue and rainbow and whatever, okay? And this will allow you to publish in a journal more than a hypothesis, okay? And this is a problem. Indeed, I mean, it can help you to solve the question. You can use this technology to solve the question. Then it's very important to have the technology. But if it is just, to make images, it's useless. In an image, what you can see is what is behind the image. Okay, you have to see the invisible beyond the visible. Okay, because this is what makes you think. And I know it's complicated. I mean, I could take you an example. I mean, just an illustration for me. You remember Galileo, or you're too young? Galileo, the guy. I mean, he discovered that the Earth was turning around the sun. Remember? Okay. Now, when you wake up in the morning, you see the sun rising at the east. Okay. And when you go to bed in the evening, you see the sun setting at the west. And you look at that, you say, well, the sun is turning around the Earth. Okay. because in the morning I see it here, and in the evening I see it here. Okay, so in fact, to understand that it's not that what happens. You have to have a theory, you have to have the calculations, you have to have the observations. You don't just have to see what's going on. Okay, I know it's a sort of stupid illustration, but if you want to use your imagination, if you want to impose your theories, you have to be able to do it independently or with the technologies, but not have the technology replace entirely your own freedom of thinking. Okay. That's the way I see it. I use microscopes. I mean, all the time. I use bioinformatics all the time. I use proteomics all the time, but I still believe in theories and hypotheses.
Actually, this is perfect for the underlying question, because we wanted to understand. So we wanted to ask about the place of imagination in science, but now can we have this place inside a paper? Because some big journal wanted, like, I'm afraid, or I'm asking about how can we share this imagination and this hypothesis. So now that we saw fact, we want to take time to think. And when we're thinking, we are doing like brain experiments. So should we share this like on paper, or should we share this on book, or what is the support?
I would say, like with Alain, whatever works. Whatever works. I mean, you can write a review. I mean, with your boss, if you have a boss, or yourself, if you are the boss yourself. As review. I mean, in reviews, I mean, people are less picky. It's in biology, which is the most difficult. In physics, for example, I mean, you can really, use your imagination. Okay, but in a paper in biology, it's more complicated. There are reasons for that, which would be too complicated, too difficult, and too lengthy to explain. But there are even good reasons for that. Okay, because people can go wide, and say anything. But if you cannot put it in your paper, in your discussion, maybe 1 or 2 lines sometimes is enough just to raise the attention of someone. 1 or 2 very short lines. I mean, that we could propose that, but this would require, further experiments, such as blah blah blah, things like that. Now, if you really want to have a theoretical development, then I think the only thing, you have journals for that. I mean, Journal of Theoretical Biology, for example. Okay, a lot of people. It's a good journal. I don't know whether you know Louis Volpert. Louis Volpert is a guy who died, a few years ago, and he's a morphogeneticist, and he has developed the model which is called the French flag problem. With the diffusion of morphogenes and thresholds and things like that. And his first paper has been extremely cited. It was in a Journal of Theoretical Biology. So you can do that. You can ask reviews. You can give a seminar. You can, there are many ways to disseminate what you think. But you have to be strong, and you have to be sure what you think, and you have to be extremely serious about what you think. It's not just blah blah blah. It's experiments to do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We have to take in mind that technology is just something to use, and after we have to have imagination to proceed from this technology. So that's the idea I get in mind.
Well, technologies are very important, and don't mistake me, okay?
Yeah, of course.
Technologies are extremely important. A lot of progress can come from technology. La lunette de Galilée was very important to, it was technology, okay? But after, voilà. What you observe is very important.
Yeah.
So, but it's not only an image. It's not only a picture to be beautiful. We don't care about beauty.
That's not science. So thank you very much for this interview. So we are done with the questions. Thanks a lot. So yeah, we would like to thank you for your time and for sharing us your experience about science. And so personally, I really feel your passion for science, and I completely agree with that. I think it's very important to to keep it in research, because that's my way of vision as well. Like, to, if I'm not passionate anymore, just I can leave it. So thank you for that, and hopefully people who will listen to this interview will enjoy it too, and will think about it as well. So we look forward to listen to you in ENCODS in July, and so directly at the Collège de France, a place you probably know better than us.
Yeah, I know it a little. Yeah.
Just a little.
And thank you for the invitation. It was very nice. I mean, it's always a pleasure to see people, discuss with people, and we will see. I will see you, I guess. I mean, in July. I think it's the 8th of July or something like that. I mean, the conference. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
8th of July. Yeah, I'll be there if I'm still alive.
Hopefully. I hope so. So yeah, thank you a lot. And for people that will listen to this interview, if they like it, just they can share it on social media. So
It's yours.
yeah.
Okay.